Welcome to eAssist Growing Your Dental Business podcast. Tune in as the experts in dental business share tips and tools to grow your practice. To learn more, visit dentalbilling.com. Please welcome our next guest.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Growing Your Dental Business podcast. My name is Jacqueline Hurley, and today we are diving into a topic that can make or break a dental practice. Managing a dental practice is more than delivering excellent patient care. It's about building, maintaining a strong, engaged team. However, we're going to learn a little bit about some things that maybe can affect that, and it could be changing employment laws, high turnover, and workplace culture challenges. So HR, or human resources, can quickly become overwhelming for dentists and office managers. I'm thrilled to have today and to welcome Alan Twigg. He is going to join us for this conversation. Alan is the co-owner of Bent Erickson Associates, and for over a decade, he has been helping thousands of dentists navigate the complexities of HR and employment compliance. He's a speaker, a consultant, and he is passionate about helping dental teams create a stress-free, legally compliant, and thriving workplace. Welcome to the podcast, Alan.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Happy to be here and looking forward to this.
Oh, good. Well, it's so fun to have you. You and I actually spent some time together recently out at a Crown Council event, which turned out to be super fun. It was an opportunity really to get to know more about you and your family. And I always enjoy the times that I can come across consultants like yourself at events like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, Bent Erickson Associates is a family business. It was started by a gentleman named Bent Erickson about 45 years ago. And then my father, Tim, purchased the company from Bent, and then Bent retired. And then I have taken over the company, or in the process of taking it over. So yeah, it's a fun family affair, and we're enjoying all working together.
I love it. It sounds like you've kind of learned about HR then from the time you were young, since your dad did it all those years.
Sure. Yeah, he has been a dental speaker and coach and consultant for pretty much longer than I've been alive. So yeah, I grew up in the industry, and consulting kind of runs in my blood, so to speak.
I love it. I love it. So today, we're kind of well on our way into 2025. And what are some of the biggest HR challenges that dental practices face that you've noticed recently and coming into 2025?
Yeah, so I would say there's a couple challenges. One is that, for context, of course, we've been through the pandemic and all the chaos that came with the pandemic of people retiring, people switching to maybe to part-time, people leaving one practice for another, and just all of that chaos of 2020, 2021. What we're seeing right now is a little bit more stability in the dental labor market, but stability doesn't mean abundant prospects for every job opening. It just means that we're not seeing as much change and volatility. But the labor shortages, as far as practices that want to grow or replace someone who's retiring or something like that, the labor shortages are still very real and very problematic. And so that's one of the big challenges, is just where can we find really good people? And we can talk, for hours about that. But the second big challenge that people need to be aware of is all of the HR compliance changes. So for some quick numbers, in the period from 2015 through 2019, we monitor state and federal labor laws, and when things change, we push out updates to clients. So in that period from 2015 to 2019, there were about 74 policy updates that were sent out nationwide, 74. In the period from 2020 through the end of 2024, it was 280. And so we're talking about a fourfold increase in either new HR laws that have come out or major changes to existing laws. And this was not due to COVID. This was due to just things like pregnancy disability accommodation laws, paid sick leave, paid family leave. There have been a number of these types of things that are mostly happening at the state level, some of which are happening at the federal level. But that is a big challenge for practices right now. And it's another reminder of why we can't just write an employee handbook, stick it on the shelf, and then we don't ever have to look at it ever again. These rules and laws are constantly changing. And it's also important to remember that a lot of these new laws do really impact employees. So something like a paid family leave policy does absolutely benefit employees. Same thing with paid sick leave, or even something like a pregnancy disability accommodation. We know how common pregnancy is in the dental world. And so it's really important that we stay up to date with those things, because going back to the first point about this labor shortage, we need to make sure that we prevent what I call preventable turnover. There is a lot of turnover that is just outside our control, people retiring or a spouse getting a job somewhere else. There's a lot of turnover, though, that is within our control as the practice leader to prevent. And some of these basic things around laws and expectations and benefits, that's real low-hanging fruit to make sure that we don't have people have a misunderstanding or we deny them something that they should be getting. So all of that is really important. And the last thing I'll say is that the ADA and Bureau of Labor Statistics have done some great data around forecasting. And one of the pieces of data was that in the next 5 years, the data was suggesting that about a third of the dental assistant and dental hygiene workforce is expected to retire within the next 5 years. And that is massive. And at least currently, in terms of folks that are coming out of accredited programs, hygiene schools, and so on, we are nowhere near that. And so it just means that this is a problem that probably is going to get worse. It's definitely not going to get better. We're not going back to 2019 or even before, where we could get lots of people with every job posting. So again, it's just a matter of folks need to be doing everything they can to keep their good employees around. So those are kind of the big challenges we see going into 2025.
So what would you suggest a dentist do, a practitioner do, to stay ahead of all of this? Like, is there any specific things that you can think of that they need to do to kind of just stay ahead, especially with compliance updates and, obviously, culture shifts or just anything and especially where we're going to be losing a lot of people in the dental industry, it sounds like, over the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the recruiting side, it's about making your office as attractive as possible. You have to look at it from the perspective of, let's say, someone who's got a great attitude. Maybe they already have some dental experience and they're looking for their new job to call home. Why should that person choose your practice versus the practice down the street? And that answer is different for every practice. Some offices, it's very professional, very career, advanced technology oriented. Other practices, maybe a pedo office, very family friendly, very fun. So every office will be unique, but you have to spend some time as the practice owner or as the manager really thinking about what makes your practice unique from the practice down the street, and be able to put that into words so that when you're doing an interview or even in your job postings, you're making that really clear and attractive. Now, on the compliance side, to be honest with you, that one is really hard to do yourself. And the reason is just that when these new laws come out, we're talking about legislation that's incredibly dense. It's not easy to read. It's potentially dozens or hundreds of pages long, and you have to then sit down and sift through it and figure out what applies to you, because sometimes there's provisions that only apply to retail or to railroad industries or things like that. And then you have to write your own policy, and that is incredibly time consuming. So that piece of staying up to date with changing laws, I would definitely recommend outsourcing that. That is absolutely something that we do. There are other companies certainly that do that, but it is just really time consuming, and it's really easy to make little mistakes if you're trying to do that yourself. It's the exact same thing if you're listening and you're a dentist and you're thinking, well, I've got an office manager. Maybe my office manager can do it. Same thing. It takes a huge amount of time. It's a big skill set, and it's really difficult to do yourself. I definitely recommend, though, if there are owners and doctors listening who maybe are a little bit newer in their career or they recently bought a practice, definitely spend some time thinking about your values and the type and kind of practice that you want to create. What do you want it to feel like in your office? What type of employee experiences do you want to create? Obviously, thinking about the type of patients that you want to see, the patient experiences, all of that is great stuff for an owner to be thinking about. And just doing your best to just try to put some of that into words. It doesn't have to be real polished. There are companies, marketing companies, even ChatGPT that can help refine some of this stuff. But definitely with things like compliance and writing your own employee handbook, I would definitely outsource that because it's one of these things where in HR, it's important to be clear, comprehensive, and compliant. And everything needs to be really comprehensive and unique to your state, how many employees you have. It obviously needs to be up to date, like we talked about earlier. And so it's just important that folks make that a priority and also recognize that this is not something that's going to take a million hours of your time, especially if you find a good company to work with, like ours and others, that you can outsource this to. Yeah, it might take a little bit of time in the beginning, a couple hours to get things drafted. But after that, ongoing updates, super easy, very minimal time effort. And the biggest thing that we hear from clients after they've put all these things in place is just the calm confidence and the peace of mind. Because there's no longer worrying, okay, gosh, what if something happens? What am I going to do? Some people post stuff on Facebook, hey, what do you guys do? But it's like in the back of your mind, you're always kind of going, well, are these people really experts? Do they really know what they're talking about? Just because it's on the internet, does that mean it's true? And all of that uncertainty goes away. And it's just incredibly calming and it's wonderful. So that's the upside to it. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of money, but it's all very doable.
That's great. So there's probably more to it than just having an employee handbook, I'm guessing. If you want to be trained a little bit more in, how you're managing your people, how you're managing your teams, is there training? Do you guys do some kind of a training as well for office managers?
We do. Yeah, we started this recently. It's called People Power, and it's designed for managers as well as owners. It's all of that sort of medium level foundational HR stuff that everyone who manages a team needs to know. But of course, nobody gets this training in dental school. A manager who came up through the ranks as a front office person or a dental assistant, they certainly don't get this kind of formal training. And we're not aware of anything like this in dentistry at the moment. There are some people who might do a little course on leadership or one small course on hiring. This covers everything from hiring, onboarding, managing a team, setting up the policies, setting up job descriptions, and then, dealing with performance issues, handling pregnancy, handling all the life circumstances that can happen with employees. And we also provide training on how to do a termination and how to do that safely without risk. So it's a 2-day course. They're in person. We have a maximum class size of 20 people so that we really foster that intimacy and that engagement where you can raise your hand and feel free to ask all of your questions that you have about HR. And we really cover all those things that you need to know, as opposed to just maybe some of the things that you're already aware of. And it also is just incredibly confidence boosting. All the testimonials we've gotten from people have found it to be so helpful, super beneficial. And again, just that idea of peace of mind and confidence, so that then when they walk into an employee situation, they at least kind of go, okay, I've got some training. I know how I'm supposed to do this, and it's really beneficial. So we've got several of those planned for 2025. We've got information on our website, and we're all over the country in various cities. So yeah, definitely a nice resource for folks.
Nice. So you guys are bumping around, creating these courses in different areas. So it's basically coming to the people more than you're expecting them to come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're hitting a bunch of different cities all over. We've got Denver, San Diego, we've got Dayton area in Ohio, we have Minnesota and also New Jersey on the book. So yeah, hopefully folks can make that work and find a location and a date that works for them.
That sounds amazing. You guys have really thought of a few extra things to really help these practices. I feel like, it's one thing to have an employee handbook. It's another thing to really feel confident in managing your team and knowing how to hire and, and if you do need to fire someone, it sounds like you walk them through that whole process. And, I'm sure you have all the scenarios built in so that if something happens, they can just go, to the resource that you guys are giving them. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sometimes use the analogy. It's like, imagine if you only did one crown per year and you barely got any training at all in how to do a crown. The reality is, no offense to any of the dentists out there, if you only do one a year, you're probably not going to be that great at it. And it's the same way with hiring or firing or handling a pregnancy. In a small dental practice, those things don't come up all day, every day. And so with the resources we have and our team of folks that we call HR specialists, anytime people have questions or situations, or they're just a little uncertain about, should I do this or that? Or maybe the situation's kind of complicated and it's not just a clear-cut case of you want to move forward this way or that way. It's really nuanced. And certainly in today's tight labor market, a lot of folks are struggling with, how do I coach an employee without scaring them off or offending them or having them just, leave and go somewhere else? So all of that's really important as well. And our team of HR specialists, in conjunction with all the materials, the guides, the resources, the job descriptions, forms, all the other things, it's all meant to just work as a nice cohesive package so that you have everything that you need, both to stay in compliance, communicate your expectations, and also be able to handle all of these different life circumstances that do come up inevitably over time.
That's great. So do you find that most practices have a dedicated HR person, or is it typically the office manager, or sometimes it may even be the dentist? How do how do most practices navigate that?
Yeah, we work primarily with smaller practices, offices that have less than 50 employees. And for most offices, for a real small office, it's always the dentist that, kind of is in charge for better or for worse. And some dentists are very entrepreneurial minded and they really enjoy that and they thrive on it. They consume all the leadership books and the TED Talks and everything, and that's wonderful. Other offices, maybe it's the dentist, but then the dentist spouse is involved and they kind of, whether they want to or not, take on the role of manager.
Yeah.
And then other offices have a quote unquote manager on staff, and that then is a huge spectrum. So we see managers that have the title but don't really do much in the HR sphere. And then other offices where, the manager fully runs the show. They make all the decisions. They have independent authority. And the dentist can really be super hands-off. So it's all over the map. The important thing to know, especially for the dentist owners listening, is that you have to have somebody who is properly trained, who is taking this stuff on. You cannot go to the government, the state labor board, or the IRS or anyone and say, oh, well, I was busy treating patients, so it's not my fault that some law got violated. As the owner, it comes down to you. And so it's very similar to OSHA, HIPAA, cybersecurity, all of those other things, record keeping and charting. It's kind of preaching to the choir. The HR compliance stuff is just like those things. You need to have proper training. It needs to be up to date. You need to have a little bit of documentation in place. And if you have all those things in place, then when issues do come up, it's usually not a big deal. A little bit of time here and there, and then you're moving on to the next thing. It's just when you don't have any documentation in place, or maybe your employee handbook is really old and outdated, or you terminate someone with no documentation, no performance reviews, no written warnings, that's usually where we start to see out-of-court settlements or lawsuits or state labor board investigations. And those are very costly, very time-consuming, and incredibly stressful.
You ever seen a situation where an employee really researches their laws and they know what the laws are, and then they kind of create havoc in a dental practice?
Absolutely. Yeah, big time. And we're seeing that more and more. I mean, it used to be before the internet that if you wanted to know a state or federal laws, I mean, you had to really work hard to go find those and look them up on paper and everything. But nowadays, pretty much every state has a labor board page for their state government website. Super easy for anybody to just look up, hey, what are the laws in my state for sick leave or breaks and lunches or handling pregnancy? What are my rights? And a lot of state labor board websites even have a dedicated area for employees and an area for employers, which makes it even easier for employees to look up an FAQ and see what their rights are. And we definitely see that a lot in really litigious states like California, New York, Massachusetts, Washington, Oregon, even Colorado now is becoming more like this. And in those states, employees are becoming much more aware. One of our HR specialists was actually down in Southern California and noticed some of the billboards. You know, there's always those billboards for the lawyers that say, were you in a car accident? Call me. Well, some of these billboards were actually speaking to labor-related things. You know, are you being harassed in your job? And these labor, you know, they're labor lawyers, but they're lawyers of some sort, or they claim to be. But yeah, they're targeting people for specifically labor-related things. And what these law firms do typically is they look for an office that does not have their ducks in a row, or the employee, the ex-employee comes to them and says, oh, no, I never signed anything. There was no employee handbook that was given to me. And then these law firms do what's called the scary letter tactic, where they send this letter to the practice that says, you're a horrible person, we're going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. And the goal, of course, is to get some sort of a settlement. We actually had an office that got one of these letters, and it was a law firm that churned these out so much and so rapidly. In one of the paragraphs, they forgot to change the name of the business, and it was some pizza restaurant or something. They forgot to put the practice's name in there. And it's one of these things where if you have your ducks in a row, if you have a good up-to-date employee handbook, if you have proper documentation, if you have everything in place, then when and if something like this happens, these law firms just, they drop the case because they know it's a waste of their time. It's probably not going to go anywhere. And we've even heard from some lawyers who represent employees in labor disputes. And the lawyer specifically will say, if the practice has all their documentation in place, I don't even take the case. I just tell the ex-employee, too bad, so sad, I'm not going to work with you, because it's just a waste of time. And so again, I know employee handbooks are not sexy compared to all the amazing cutting edge dentistry that's out there right now. Employee handbooks can seem like amalgam fillings. It's why are we even talking about this? But it's for all of these reasons that we've outlined. And there is another reason that we haven't talked about, which is sometimes in HR, we look at things from the negative perspective of, you know, the worst case scenario, the bad employees, the people we have to fire. You also have to think about your good employees, or think about someone that you want to onboard who does have a really great attitude. And we really want them to onboard successfully and be a really awesome, productive employee as soon as possible. One of the basic things there is they need to know what success looks like. They need to know what the expectations are. Every office is a little bit different. Just because this person worked as a dental assistant somewhere else doesn't mean that they automatically know your expectations, how your team operates. So we need these things like employee handbooks and job descriptions and standard operating procedure guides. We need those things in place so that we can onboard people quickly, get them up to speed, and so that we don't have any of that little employee department friction where we have someone who's using their cell phone all the time because at the last office they were allowed to do that, but maybe at your office it's more strict. Whatever those things are, it's so important so that the team can be successful and positive. So again, it's always easy to focus on the negative, and I know as dentists, you know, we're always trained to look for the problems, but we also need to keep in mind our good and our positive employees as well.
For sure. Well, it just seems like having all of this in place creates clarity, creates consistency, creates a more collaborative team because everyone knows what their job description is. Everyone knows what they should be doing. And it sounds like your people power training just goes hand in hand with all of that. And it seems like as an office manager or as a dentist of a small practice, they would want to be educated in all of that. Just like you said, it builds confidence. And it's a better practice all the way around if you're taking care of all of those things.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it makes a big difference. And there's the people power piece, and then all of the HR foundational stuff is in something that we call the HR director package, and folks can go to our website if they want to learn more about that. But it basically is designed to have everything that you need without a whole bunch of extra stuff that you don't need. And it's just all the foundational pieces of the good, solid employee handbook, job descriptions, forms, keeping everything up to date over time so you don't get out of date. And then also that HR specialist time. And we really want folks to reach out and ask questions and get ahead of these things, because most of the time when dentists get in real trouble, it's usually because something came up and they didn't reach out to a true expert. They kind of thought, well, this seems reasonable, I'll kind of wing it, and then it snowballs into something more serious. So yeah, all of this stuff, it's all doable. I know the HR piece can feel overwhelming and feel daunting, and dentists especially are pulled in 20 different directions, and they got to see patients all day, and it's really hard to find the time. But once you have these things in place, getting everything, updated and maintained over time, it's super easy, and it's incredibly just calming. And we love to create that peace of mind for folks.
For sure. I love that. So how's the best way to get a hold of you and your team?
Yeah, folks are welcome to reach out to us. We have an 800 number. It's 1-800-679-2760. And we also have our email. It's info@benterickson.com. Folks can feel free to reach out and ask questions. And, we're happy to chat with you, see what you have currently in place, see if it's a good fit. Happy to work with folks. And certainly the people power, there's info on our website at benterickson.com about that. And yeah, we'd love to chat with you and learn more about your practice and what your needs are.
Such a great takeaway. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining me today. If HR has ever felt overwhelming to you, we have a solution, and that is Bent Erickson and Associates, and they're here to help you be stress-free, legally compliant, and have a thriving dental team. So go to Bent Erickson and Associates. That sounds amazing. Before we close, I'd like to take a moment just to thank our sponsor, eAssist Dental Solutions. At eAssist, we specialize in helping dentists eliminate the stress of insurance billing, claims management, and revenue cycle challenges. So just kind of like HR, we kind of go hand in hand in trying to relieve that stress that's in the dental practice, take away that busy work that's kind of on the back end so that you can focus on patients and your team members. Like HR, insurance, and revenue cycle management can be time consuming. So if you'll go to dentalbilling.com, we would love to schedule a complimentary consultation and see how we can learn to see what we can do to help your practice. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate you being here. Is there any last piece of advice that you would give someone on HR? Like, what's your one top piece of advice for HR?
I would just say, treat this as a marathon and not a sprint. So just know that all this stuff about compliance and culture and people and hiring and leading and inspiring a team and all of that stuff, just recognize this is a marathon, not a sprint. There's not going to be a destination where you'll arrive and then you'll never have to think about it ever again. It's just like exercise, right? We don't work out once and then we're in shape for the rest of our lives. It's just little bits here and there over time. And that is really what separates, the practices that we see that really thrive from the ones that are just kind of, treading water is they just invest that little bit of time, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there in their HR piece. And that adds up over time and it sets them apart. So that's the thing, just, little bits at a time. Don't go too crazy and burn yourself out, but just see it as a marathon, not a sprint.
I love it. Well, thank you again, Alan, for joining me today. Until next time, keep growing, thriving, and building your dream dental team. Thanks, everybody.
The purpose of this podcast is to interview the consultants within our eAssist Consultant Network. This podcast is for informational purposes only. For more details, please visit the homepage of this podcast platform at dentalbilling.com. Thanks for listening.